Welcome to Bada Goodbyes. Each week on our show, we spotlight species from the IUCN Critically Endangered Red List. These are plants and animals with decreasing populations, nearing the edges of extinction. We'll share species research, information, and conservation proposals, and then we'll spend part of the show opening a space for contemplation and awe. We'll perform a soundscape of gentleness, of reflection, of delight, and maybe of grieving. Without conservation activity and significant societal shift, many of these species may not survive the 21st century. And so perhaps we might acknowledge their journey with a moment of our attention, a recognition of our kinship, and with a commitment to personal and systemic change. Thank you for listening. On today's show, we consider the Eswatini Poker. The Eswatini Poker is a critically endangered flowering plant native to southeastern Africa, to the country of Eswatini, near the western border with the country of South Africa. Its scientific name is Kniphofia umbrina, and it was first described in 1966. The Eswatini Poker is a perennial flower. It has a life cycle with periods of growth, reproduction, and dormancy that persists over multiple years. They can reach heights of 3 to 5 feet with a thick, elongated central stem and roughly 8 long, narrow, V-shaped leaves that can grow up to 2 feet in length, but are only 1 inch wide. The leaves are green and have a smooth margin. The margin is the edge of the leaf, so it has smooth edges, and the leaves have a relatively blunt end. Atop that central stem grows an uncanny, large and lovely inflorescence, a cluster of flowers. In the case of the Eswatini Poker, the inflorescence is roughly 1 foot tall and 2 inches in diameter, with hundreds of tiny, inch-long, dusty pink, tube-like cylindrical flowers. And these flowers fade to a rich, deep purplish brown as they age. They grow in a raceme structure, meaning that the flowers develop atop the stem. So the oldest flowers at the base of the cluster and the youngest at the top. The stem continues to grow, produce new flower buds at the tip, while the older flowers at the bottom mature and age. This results in a kind of spear-shaped inflorescence with a striking gradient coloring of bright pink on top, darkening downward into purples and browns as the older flowers are pollinated and begin seed growth, or go unpollinated and the blooms wilt. Each of these hundreds of tiny flowers has 3 to 6 exserted stamen. Stamen are the pollen-producing male reproductive organ that broadly consists of 2 main parts: the filament, which is a slender stalk that is tipped by the anther, a generally small oblong structure that produces and stores the pollen. Exserted stamen then means that the stamen protrude, extending beyond the flower's petals. In the case of the Eswatini poker, the filament are yellow-green, the anther are brownish, adding additional coloring and a stringy kind of texture to the remarkable inflorescence. Though I could not find direct observation in my research, the Eswatini poker is most likely pollinated by birds. Their flowers evidence features seemingly adapted for bird pollination. So they're nectar-rich, the bright colors, and the downward-facing tubular shape of the flower provides long-billed birds, like the sunbirds of their native habitat, easier access to the nectar. The plant blooms January to March, and after successful pollination, the flowers develop into small, dry fruit capsules containing numerous tiny seeds. Small and lightweight, it is most likely that these seeds are dispersed by the wind. The species is long-lived and slow-growing, taking as many as 8 years to reach reproductive maturity and first flowering. In the dream, to be sipped from, to be thirsted for, to sing of my sweetness in purple and pink. In the dream, to bend downward in offering. Ours can be a world of great generosity, a tangle of needs and hospitalities, of sacrifice, of sustenance. And in the dream, for a moment, to be present to those relations, to be of it in the grand mutualism, the unbounded touching of life to life over and over. And to simply be sipped of and savored. In the dream. The Eswatini poker is native to southeastern Africa, to the nation of Eswatini, a small landlocked country bordered on 3 sides by South Africa and then Mozambique to the north. At roughly 7,000 square miles in land area, it is slightly smaller than the U.S. state of New Jersey. The Eswatini poker's native habitat is in the northwest of the country, roughly 10 miles north of Mbabane, Eswatini's second largest city, near the Mbuzi River and the Untitled Nature Reserve. The reserve was originally established in 1978 with the specific intent of conserving the Eswatini poker, and most of the remaining population of the flower is found within the reserve's roughly 1 square mile. This is a high-altitude, marshy grassland, nearly a mile above sea level, with soft rolling hills and warm wet summers, cold dry winters. Summer high temperatures average in the upper 70s Fahrenheit, and winter temps average in the 40s Fahrenheit. The region receives roughly 50 inches of annual precipitation, but it is highly seasonal. The swamp is inundated in the wet summer months, but will often dry out entirely towards the end of winter before the rains begin again. Soil is generally acidic, and trees are scarce. There is little concentration of dense foliage. We predominantly find grasses and small shrubs in the soft, wet soil. The Eswatini poker shares its habitat with Lanner falcon, pied kingfisher, malachite sunbird, forest canary, buff streaked chat, grass owl, Cape baboon, common purple glossed snake, ground woodpecker, bald ibis, African marsh harrier, mountain reedbuck, striped flufftail, swee waxbill, black tilapia, white-faced whistling duck, chorister robin, Egyptian goose, and many, many more. Historically, the Eswatini poker population was significantly reduced by direct human activity, including habitat transformation for agriculture, specifically growing maize, and infrastructure development, so road and dam construction, all in the 1970s. Today, human-induced habitat loss continues to threaten the species through continued clearing for agriculture and, more recently, housing developments. And in areas not cleared, remaining native plant life is being overgrazed by human-introduced domesticated livestock. Additionally, the broad ecosystem and the Eswatini poker itself are threatened by the spread of human-introduced invasive plant species, in particular black wattle. This is a species that can consume 4 times the amount of water of native species and whose seeds remain viable over multiple seasons, so it both takes vital resources from and reproductively outcompetes native plant life. Human-induced climate change is a long-term threat. Changing weather patterns resulting in wetter, wet seasons and drier, dry seasons affect the balance of the poker's habitat. Fortunately, the Eswatini poker has seen decades of conservation attention and is legally protected both nationally and internationally. But historically, botanists have struggled with off-site cultivation. In the late 1970s, nearly 2,000 individuals were relocated from the Hawane to a nearby national park, but none survived. In the late 1980s, focused attempts by national and international botanic gardens resulted in some initially successful cultivation, but by 2024, only 2 small off-site collections remain. In its native habitat, most of the remaining population of the Eswatini poker are found on the Hawane Reserve, but that land is not being actively protected from livestock grazing, and so that threat persists. Some subpopulations on privately owned land are being protected by those landowners. For example, one subpopulation has been fenced in to protect against potential grazers. In 2023, 3 individuals cultivated off-site were replanted in the species' native habitat, though their long-term success is, as of yet, unclear. Eswatini poker has been considered critically endangered on the IUCN Red List since 2024, and their population is currently in decline. Our most recent counts estimate that less than 21 Eswatini poker remain in the wild. Information for today's show about the Eswatini poker was compiled from Eswatini Biodiversity, from the IUCN, from the JSTOR Global Plants Database, from PlantLife SouthAfrica Volume 51, Number 7, from the Ramsar Sites of Wetlands of International Importance, from the South African Journal of Science Volume 97, Number 1112, and from Wikipedia. So in a moment, I would like to perform some music, hopes of holding space to be in contemplation of the other lives with whom we share our earth. I do not intend to put meaning upon or extract meaning from the Eswatini Poker. Instead, I simply want this music to express my awe for other beings. So I will pause in the space of sound and reflection, and I warmly invite you to join me. down to the life force of the Eswatini Poker, I will commit its name to my record. I am so grateful to have shared time on this planet with this beautiful being. I lament the ways I and my species have harmed and diminished this species. I grieve. So in the name of the Eswatini Poker, I pledge to reduce my consumption, my carbon footprint, and my wastefulness. I pledge to acknowledge and attempt to address the costs of my actions and my inactions. And I pledge to resist the harm of plant and animal kin and their habitat by individuals, corporations, and governments. I forever pledge my song to the witness and memory of all life, to a broad celebration of biodiversity, and to the total liberation of all beings. This has been Bada Goodbyes. Thank you for listening. Until next time, let's take care of each other and all of our kin.